Good evening and warm welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are all braced up. This is session number 183. Let me share my screen. So, WiseViews leadership conversations are conversations actually with the leaders, which we typically hold on Fridays. And this time we are holding it on Thursday. And this session will be held and led by Ms. Aruna Roy. And she's already joined us. The topic is the personal is political. We will understand better about it in a moment. So this brief introduction and then the opening remarks will be for about 20-25 minutes all put together, followed by about 40 minutes of Q&A. That's the rough schedule that we have. So what a great opportunity to actually introduce ma'am. So let me not read out the entire profile, but let me summarize here and there. She is a renowned social and political activist and a founder member of the MKSS, which is the Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, and the National Campaign for People's Right to Information, NCPRI. She is a member of the National Alliance of People's Movements, the People's Union for Civil Liberties, the People's Action for Employment Guarantee, and similar such campaigns. She's also the president of the National Federation of Indian Women for the third term. She held many advisory roles, say from 2004 to 6, and between 2010 and 2013, she was a member of the NAC, the National Advisory Council, set up by the UPA government to monitor promises made in the National Common Minimum Program, which included an employment guarantee law, a stronger right to information legislation, and the National Food Security Law. In 2015, she was appointed as member of the Audit Advisory Board of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. She has also been a member of international organizations working on anti-corruption, transparency, accountability, so on and so forth. Throughout her life, large part of her life, I think around 57 years or so till now, she has worked in 50 years roughly in social work, as a social activist, several organizations that she has impacted, several groups of people that she has impacted. MKSS was around 1990, which was founded, and she had her personal imprint on rights policies or rights law, that some of them are NREGA and MNREGA and various other impactful legislations that were brought about for the people, and many other accomplishments. Her recognition and accomplishments are large, but let me read just one or two. She was Raman Magsaysay Awardee for Community Leadership in the year 2000. Firm believer in collective effort, she has insisted that Magsaysay Award rightly belongs to the people in the MKSS and outside who fought for the RTI and other people's entitlements. This award money has been put into a trust to support the process of democratic struggle. In 2011, she was named one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine. That same year, MKSS was awarded the Rule of Law Award at the World Justice Forum in Barcelona, Spain. In 2010, she received the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Award for Excellence in Public Administration, Academy and Management, and the Nani Palkiwala Award for Civil Liberties in the year 2009. So I had an opportunity of meeting ma'am at Chennai, the Hindu Lit Fest, and I have completed reading her book also now. And it's a fantastic book. The personal is political, and that's also the topic. I'm sure we are going to have a fantastic conversation, as I mentioned. So thank you, ma'am, for joining. And now I take the pleasure in introducing my esteemed colleague, Professor R. Prasad. He brings about 3 decades of rich experience as a corporate professional, as an entrepreneur, and also as an academic. He holds a BTech from IIT Bombay and PGDM from IIM Kolkata. Welcome, Professor Prasad. Thank you so much. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you so much. This is the book. This is the book. I made several notations here, and very, very interesting to read this book. I really enjoyed. It is hard-hitting at times. It is actually thought-provoking in many places, and it allowed me to question myself while you were questioning yourself in many pages. It allowed me to question those homogenization, those stereotyping. There are many questions to myself. I bring in 1 or 2 questions while the Q&A is on. For now, we are open to listening to you, ma'am. Once again, thank you, and please start your opening talk.
Namaskar, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you. I, as you see, am not armed with all the paraphernalia that a lecturer normally is armed with. So I'm here for a conversation. So I would be very, very happy if you feel that you should start with a few questions rather than make me talk. And then I will speak, of course. So, Mr. Sudhakar Rao, since you've read the book, would you like to ask me a few questions and then I'll respond? And then we can throw it open to the house, perhaps whatever anyone likes. Because
Yeah,
this is
great.
really a conversation. The book is a conversation. It's not really a pedantic piece of work trying to tell you what should be. It's more a question of sharing with you what have been my issues with writing, reading, and various things in the course of my life. So, would you like to?
Yes, ma'am. So in this conversation, we will deviate from the norm and we will experiment as you have helped us do that. So, Professor Prasad, if you excuse me, I'll start with one or two questions and then you can take over from there. Ma'am, a lot of people don't understand the roots of the personal is political. I think that is something which we need to understand in simple language. I know it's a feminist slogan originated in the year 1960 or 60s, and subsequently how it is intertwined into the way we behave and the way we react to various issues at hand. That needs to be explained as a first one. Second, you've been a civil servant, you've been an IAS officer for 7 years, and from there, you shifted to active activism. You have gone to grassroots. You have made a rural village your home and continued to deliver whatever you wanted to deliver from there. So we wanted to understand the journey of transformation. Why I want to understand the journey is this is where it hit me hard. I am also urban middle class, but I have not gone to the rural India. When I say there are many like me, but let me take my name itself. What does it take to actually imbibe that need to work for the grassroots level? I seem to be quite comfortable. I have no questions in my mind. I go to my office, I work, and I seem to be doing very well. Where am I erring? What is something which I am actually doing wrong? This is the reflective question I heard. What is it that you have that made you actually junk the very good job, the job that gives power, and then go to a very hardship kind of a phase of life that you chose to at that time, which normally many people don't do? And in your own book, when you mentioned about your own peers in the civil services, you had mentioned that as an aspirant, you had a lot of ideals of, changing this country. This country would be served by these people. They would bring social justice, on and so forth, from the corridors of power. But soon after getting into that position, none of those would be generally talked about. I'm generalizing it, but still, largely that's what is palpable even now. We were talking about 1968 to 1975, but I think largely the picture is even now the same. This is the second bucket of question I have. And the third one is how do we handle and communicate and navigate this feminism aspect without actually creating an in-your-face kind of feminism, especially in the contemporary India that we are dealing with? Activism seems to be not understood properly. I have also not seen many people coming up with some tangible outcomes from their activism. What is your message for the new age leader who is emerging, who is in 20s probably, and probably who are in 40s also, to grapple with and navigate with the influence and abuse sometimes of technology and social media? What are the things that we should watch for? What are the things we should avoid for? And what are the focus areas to be an activist? And what are the things that we should listen to? So this is the third bucket of questions. If you can explain this, then we'll come back with more questions. I'm sure Professor Prasad will join at that time. Over to you, ma'am.
You see me actually sitting in what is a shared home with my husband. This is not my place of work. It is a place where I am living my elderly years in. In other words, it is in a village, but all these books you see at the back, they're all inherited from 3 generations of our families where books were important and read. And the painting that you see at the back of me, that is a painting done of the MKSS by a very well-known up-and-coming young artist called Aban Raza, where you see us with our jeep. It's not very clear, but with a jeep going on a yatra where we are telling people what their rights are, what transparency and accountability, and you have in the foreground, you have a group of women. So you don't have to give up anything to be anything. The first thing is you have to understand giving up has to be then unpacked. What are you giving up? What did I give up when I left the IAS? I gave up a chair, kursi in Hindi. I gave up the notion of power because I don't know how much power I really had. I gave up the wall that was surrounding me, which did not either let me behave as I should or wanted to do for people, and also became a super protection against any kind of demand for transparency or accountability. It gave me impunity. Now, this is what I went away from. And when I sat in the civil service in the office, I never knew what I was signing on a piece of paper. Files come every day, and you can't demand that every file should be read by me. How could it be read by me? The file had to be read by the staff, the file had to be read by so many people, and they put up the papers, and you never know whether what they say in that file is actually what is on ground. So every day I went home, I wondered how many people's lives I had signed away that day by signing on a piece of paper. I don't think being in what is notional power is really very comfortable because you don't have any real power. The power in the IAS is more to command respect of a sort you may not get otherwise. It is a place from which you can do a lot of harm. How much good you can do remains to be seen, because to do good, you have to fight within the system, because there's so many vested interests within the system. You have people who come from either senior bureaucracy or politicians or people with money outside who will pay to get their way through. So there are many people you have to fight to get to the notion of justice. So this illusion of power used to really make me feel uncomfortable all the time. So actually I gave up discomfort, if you like, when I left the IAS. I say it in 100,000 ways because this is the most oft question of me in all my life. Every single conversation I have, someone asks me, and I must have had thousands of conversations by now. And in every one of them, they ask me this, and every time the essence is the same, but the way I say it is different, because otherwise I'd get bored answering the same question the same way. If you listen to me on the YouTube answering this question, you may find me answering it otherwise. But one line will suffice, that no bureaucracy was ever made to transfer power. No bureaucracy ever worked for anything but the status quo. And this is a universal truth. You can look at bureaucracies with kingdoms, bureaucracies independent in republics, bureaucracies with dictators, bureaucracy with genuine democracy and democratic leaders. Everywhere it worked for the status quo. So what was told it to do, it did. It is not an independent space at all. So there's no freedom of expression. There's no freedom even to fight for justice. Even though the law of the land is there and it's supposed to uphold your decision, it still doesn't work. So for me, leaving the IAS was actually freedom. Freedom from fear, from anxiety, of thinking I might be doing something wrong. This slogan, personal is political, was coined by feminists in the 1960s, because whenever a woman takes any issue up in the public domain, she was told that this is a personal issue and you should not say it. You will be intruding on the privacy of your family and friends. This is something you shouldn't say. This is something you should hide. Whatever she was told, she could not make it public. What did she want? She wanted work, she wanted employment, she wanted equality, she wanted food, she wanted her mind to develop, she wanted the right to disagree, dissent, everything. She was told, no, this is too personal and you will betray the family, so you cannot get into the political stream. Why can't the husband and wife be of different political ideologies? Look at Sucheta Kriplani and J.B. Kriplani. J.B. Kriplani was a socialist, Sucheta Kriplani was a Congress person. You had people with one person in the communist stream, one person in the Congress. You had so many people in the beginning of our independence who had differences politically, but still stayed married. Why didn't we follow the extraordinary examples of Indians, of Indian women who had the courage to stand up to their husbands and say, we don't agree with you. We won't impose on you to change your point of view, but please have the courtesy not to do it for me either. So we'll work outside at home. I'll be your wife, you be my husband, and we live in amity. This has been an example that has been quoted to me since I was young. And my husband and I have differences also. And the first thing we agreed upon when we got married, because I married out of choice, I had a marriage which was not ostentatious, it was extremely simple and all kinds of things. I lived up to my principles and values, and so did my husband. And we agreed to disagree as one of the tenets of our marriage, was that we leave independence to thought and action. So the impingement of all this for me is awful. So the personal is political is a slogan which defines it to very great extent my life. But this feminist slogan also tells you that every personal decision, now government passes a law saying that love jihad, the marriages between inter-community marriages. Intercommunity marriages are not forced. Let me tell you very clearly, intercommunity marriages are of choice. At least in our history, if you see, I have been named Aruna after Aruna Asif Ali. Aruna was a Bengali, she married a Muslim. So she became Aruna Asif Ali. She was not forced to marry Asif Ali. Tara Ali Beg. Tara was a Brahmo Bengali. She married Ali Beg. And the inverse has also taken place. Indrajit Gupta, Bengali, married a Muslim woman. And these are all choices you make. So in my time, whenever there was an intercommunity marriage, we thought, that's a marriage of choice. Because you can't force. The force only comes when you marry within your community. Then your parents tell you, you must marry X, marry Y, because that person earns more. And very often it is not so either, because my parents married almost in the same community and they were not forced. The point really is, in all these issues, the personal does become political. My right to property is a political right, because women were not part of the Hindu undivided family. They did not get any property until the law was passed and we became eligible for that. Why should there be dowry given for my marriage? So you're giving away the capital with the interest. When you give, I'm the capital. You're giving away the capital, then why do you have to pay interest? You're giving me away. In the concept of an Indian marriage, the girl is given away to the in-laws. So you've given me away and I'm the capital, but you have to pay interest also for the capital to be moved. Absurd. So in all these ways, if you look at it, the personal is political for a woman. And there are hundreds of other examples I won't give you. But in a village, a girl child is not given milk. A girl child does not have the right to sit on a cycle. The girl child doesn't have the right to go to school. The girl child, there's so many things. Boy will go and play, girl child will have to help mother in the kitchen, bring water. Many, many ways. The personal is political was a slogan that could be interpreted in very many ways to suit the plight of inequality in the life of a woman. That's why it was so important. I think the urban middle class is a very wide definition. Amongst this, there are many kinds of layers of access to entitlements, access to riches, access to thought, access to education. It's not one group. But one thing unites it, and that is that it wants to live within the confines of kind of comfort one imagines the city provides, which is, I don't have to tell you all the comforts that it provides. It used to provide more comforts in the past because villages had nothing, but today they have more. So when I came to rural Rajasthan, there was no drinking water, pipe drinking water, there was no electricity, there were no roads that were good enough. Commutation was okay because I lived in a village that was well connected. But commuting was a problem. Of course, communication was a huge problem as a woman for me, because every man, I went to talk to a man with a little child, the man would talk to that little boy. He would not talk to me. But if you think it's any different in urban areas, let me abuse you of that impression. Recently, and I am, whatever I am age now, I'm almost 80. I'm going to be 79 this year. But I've learned the computer and I can do lots of things with the computer with my male colleagues can't do. But if I go with a younger colleague, male colleague, to any computer shop, do you think that man will talk to me? Of course not. He looks at his man and he talks to the man. Because a woman can't use a computer. A woman can't be technologically competent. A woman can. There's so many ways in which we are completely stratified, even in an urban area. In a rural area, there still is, the lines are very clearly drawn. You can't go beyond that. So for us, the question of Doing things is tougher, but it's there in urban areas as well. And the hope, to cut this long explanation very short, I read a very good article in the New York Times about a year ago, which said that the worst enemy of real sharing, equality, and development is convenience and comfort. But at the point of when you want to give up a convenience, the idea of an urban life is being defined as a kind of comfort and convenience for the person. The moment you remove them from there, then panic begins. Oh God, I'm going to sit in that village. How will I talk? How will I do this? How will I do that? How will I cook? Is there any gas? Is there anything? I won't have that convenience. And of course, the infamous toilet. Will there be a toilet or will there not be a toilet? The first few years I lived in rural Rajasthan, there were no public toilets. So you learned how to use the modes that were there available in the village. So if we always think only of convenience and comfort, it can be the reverse way. People who go from the villages to cities find it extremely uncomfortable and inconvenient to live in a village. They don't get homes. They live on the streets. They live in juggi jhopdis. They live in slums. For them, it's extremely difficult. The only reason why they come is because they get employment there. Villages don't give them employment. So that's why, incidentally, we fought for Manrega. Because with Manrega, women's migration has stopped. I'm not saying all men don't go. Men still go because extra money has to be earned. But women have stopped migrating. Then feminism is a very wide area of interaction of women for equality. And in that, there are many things that happen. So I just think that feminism, let me go back to the root of feminism. Feminism has three important slogans. One is, of course, personal is political, which I've quoted as the title of my book. But it also has another slogan which says, my life is a revolution, which means that the revolution doesn't lie outside in some space. For me, everything is revolution. My ability to get my food, my clothing, my education, get my father to listen to me, get my mother to agree that I won't get married when I'm 18, but I'll get married later. Everything for us is a revolution. So my life is a revolution. And the third one was the intimate enemy. Because in patriarchy, whom do you fight? You fight the men in your home. You fight your father whom you love. You fight the brother whom you love. Fight the son whom you love. Or you struggle with them. You don't fight with them, but you struggle with them for understanding and granting you equality. So in one sense, you see many manifestations of feminism in these three slogans. But there is also one very important feminist overlay on all this, which is the public demand that feminism has always made is for peace against war. Feminism is against violence. Feminism is for peace against war. Now that has somehow got removed from our vocabulary because everywhere now warmongering has become such an important thing, but it's still there. And also, let's not misunderstand that feminists fight for equality in every sphere. We want equality not only in the constitution, but we want equality in representation. We want equality in visibility. We want equality in empowerment, and we want equality in recognition. Now, till these equalities come, we will always struggle and we will always speak. And in the book, I say at one point, quoting Jane Austen, I don't know if I can easily get the quotation, but quoting Jane Austen, I say that a woman is always called aggressive. Just a second. Just let me get the quotation out. There's a very famous book called Pride and Prejudice, written by a famous writer called Jane Austen, who's one of my most favorite writers. By the way, I like all my feminine writers very much. Virginia Woolf, Jane Austen, Emily Bronte, and modern writers. If you want to come right to yesterday, Jenny Elfenbeck, everybody, they're good writers. They're solid writers. Anyway, I say it's a truth universally acknowledged that girls and women who fight for equality, decency, and dignity are usually called aggressive. To be damned, they must simply be strong, expressive women and be able to win the argument, or just different from the stereotypical women of the conservative male imagination. The ones who assert the rights understand that being called aggressive may even be an acknowledgement of shifting power. From the moment the female identity is established in the womb to the moment death takes us, an inferior species is subtly managed and manipulated. It's true. It is true. So in this imbalance of power, imbalance of recognition, respect, acknowledgement. There are varied responses to how you want your equality. And as you rightly say, there may be not so. Some people are in the face, some people are not in the face. My entire life I've spent I'm a very strong feminist, but I'm not, and I'm a very aggressive feminist in the sense the aggression lies in my demand for positions. But I don't believe that you can be rude, you can be violent, or you need to confront, but you need to confront with dignity. And you must take your position and stay strong in it. So I am counted as a very strong feminist, and I feel that in my life, I've never thought the men as a lesser species. If I do that, then I violate my own norms. Men are equal, but they should recognize that they are equal and not superior to us. So in that battle, sometimes it can be an aggressive battle, but that must be understood why there is aggression. I'll end here now. I'll stop here and I'll wait for you to take it forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for this opening explanation of some of the fundamental things that we are going to talk about today. I think that acceptance and recognition of equality, of gender, of access, and of rights. I think it's been a continuing question throughout your book, right from your family at home. Actually, at one point you questioned your father also, that he had some kind of license to go out 8 hours without being questioned, but your mother is left within those walls of home, bounded by the duty to the family. And that you questioned very early in the book, in the early pages of the book. Two, the discomfort at the IAS Academy. And then subsequently, anyway, in the rural setup also, you questioned about the existing stereotypes and the patriarchal layers that are objecting or obstructing a lot of work that one could have possibly done. I think it's there throughout consistently coming. At this stage, what I would request is, I once again want to welcome all the members who have joined, and I request all the members also to key in their questions in case they have any additional questions. We will now start with our Professor Prasad for the cluster number 1 for his questions. I request you to start, Professor Prasad. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rao. Thank you, ma'am, for responding to the initial questions on the book. My first question is directed towards your experience and perspective in today's times. And if you were to start all over again at a young age, today, afresh after having completed your studies, given today's context and the issues and problems, many of them do continue, but what is the pathway that you would take?
I would take the road not walked upon, that's sure. It might be outrageous in many ways for people to see me walking that path. But I can only imagine what I would do. And that is from my vantage point of being over 70 and having lived through almost parallel to India's independence. Seen a very different India, a humane India, a listening India, a compatible India. All that is there in my mind. So what I say is colored by that being who is now on the verge of becoming 79. So you must forgive me if I sound a little different from what a young woman might say. Actually, I would think that if I were to really walk the path today in India, I would take on a couple of things. I mean, and I'm going to tell them to you in a sort of not in a sequence of priority, but things. First of all, I'd look at electoral democracy. And I would say to myself, the promise of my vote speaking to power has been vitiated. My vote has become either a manipulation for someone else to get into power to do what they want, or it has become, if I am not aware of it, in my ignorance, it has become a tool to reinforce a kind of mindless use of that vote for power. Or if I am still beyond these two, that I've become indifferent to one of the most powerful modes of exercising power to demand transparency and accountability of the system. So I would look at electoral democracy, and there are many subsets to that. It is the use of technology through the EVMs, the kind of fixing that's possible through EVMs. So everyone is saying it's not possible. The Supreme Court is still not allowing us to look at those slips that come out and count them. Why can't we verify through those slips that come out as you put your hand on the EVM machine, there is a slip of paper that comes out. We are demanding you count those slips as you count the EVM machine. They're refusing to do so. If there is no problem with it, why aren't you counting them? When I was an electoral officer in the IS for a couple of elections, we were locked into a room and for 12 hours and we counted the votes. I used to sit there and people were counting the votes. They were not allowed to go outside that building. There was a toilet and they were supplied with tea and whatever eatables they have wanted, and they could not leave. But the point is, technology has become, and the second thing I take up from point of view of the electoral system, is the blind use of technology today, where technology has become the master and we are the servants. Whether it is the misuse of the Aadhaar card, whether it's all the swindles that are happening through transferred OTPs and through our phones, through all the technology that's come in, and it's such a powerful technology that to contest it individually is impossible. I will think of how there can be collective opposition to misuse of this technology. And thirdly, I would say that no matter what government comes to power, or which kind of government comes to power, which kind of technology they use, all information must be open for observation for all people, if it's a democracy. If it's not a democracy, surely control the information. But there is a saying which says information is power. So if information is power, then distribution of information is democratic. It's a democratic country. It's a democratic city. It's a democratic system. It's a democratic governance. If you don't distribute information, you're using a modern technology to corner all power. And I would contest that.
Thank you, ma'am. Apart from electoral democracy, is there any other priority on which you would focus given your experience?
I would focus on governance. Governance, for instance, is the nerve which delivers for you and me everything we want, whether it's the civil supplies, whether it's transport, whether it's anything you want. It's through governance. And if governance is corrupt and misuses power and uses impunity, you and I cannot access anything until that power chooses to let you and me do it. And that is despotism, it's fascism, it's a dictatorship, it's not democracy. So I would really look at governance very seriously with the constitution in my hand and with the modes that have been set up, the independence of the judiciary, independence of the legislature, the independence of the executive. So there's these three bodies oversee each other and ensure that all of them work honestly, instead of, as we see today, everything joining hands to destroy the democratic rights of common citizens. That's not what the Constitution imagined. And absolute power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is true from time immemorial. This is not a new thing we are talking about. So I would really say we have to make sure that power performs and that you can speak truth to power. Should be able to speak truth to power, and freedom of expression is a vitally important mode through which we speak truth to power. Public demonstrations, public action is another way we speak truth to power. These methods and these modes should not be constrained.
Thank you, ma'am. Two vital aspects, two vital areas where perhaps, the younger generation may feel motivated to join up. Given your experience, you've already identified it. So that was the motive for the question. I move to the next question, ma'am. And this is about the execution aspects of, you have done this journey of building momentum and for right to information, right to food, and right to work. Now there was an idea and then there is a movement and finally you got the act. And a lot of people are benefiting from it. When you look at that journey and then you look at what is it for those who need to organize today, even in the cases that you have referred to, those areas that you have referred to, what are the lessons, what are the insights that you would like to give to the audience on this journey and the leadership elements which are, any elements which are very critical to this journey for those who are leading it?
Firstly, I think no struggle finishes at a point. See, if you look, if you are a student of science, you know that there is always a causality. There's a reaction to action and an action to reaction. It continues. So when these laws got passed, of course, we reached a threshold of great achievement. But equally on the other side, there were people massed up to see that these acts, which will really look at decentralized power, would not be successful, because if they were successful, then their power diminished. So they were prepared at all costs to finish. So do you think they stopped with the act being passed? Of course not. If you look at the Right to Information Act, today there's the DPDPA, the Data Protection Act, with one subclause. It's going to finish the Right to Information law completely with third-party fiduciary. They waited all these years. Previous governments were foolish enough to engage in real change of law through Parliament. There were huge protests and they had to stop. But this is, by the way, through the back door, through the side entrance. So we must absolutely understand that it doesn't end with one thing. So today's generation must protect and enhance the use of the rights that have got to them because of previous battles. So they must protect those laws. They must protect the Constitution. They must protect the Right to Information law, to protect the Manrega law. So that's a very important thing. For Manrega, you must look at the budgets. Look at the pittance they're giving. If you say, okay, let's take a rough estimate, 30 to 40% of people benefit from Manrega. What percentage of the budget are you giving them? Not even 1% of the budget GDP are you giving them. Is it fair? These are all questions our young people should ask themselves. Let them go into statistics. You know, I don't have a great belief in statistics. I read a book called How to Lie with Statistics when I was an undergraduate. It's made a deep impression on me. But nevertheless, statistics give you some kind of information about how things are going. Let them look at those statistics. So look at Right to Information, Manrega, look at the right to food. The whole allocation is decreasing. So you have a right to food, but the allocation is decreasing. And there is genuine malnutrition amongst families and people. And in the last 2 years, I've seen so many young people die. It's shocking. You know, I've never seen so many young people die. They're attributing everything to COVID. But I think it's also to be attributable to bad food, bad air, pollution, so many other things. The last thing I'd like to tell them is that if you really believe that pollution, environment, climate change are important things, just don't go putting up cans or bins for collecting rubbish. That is true, you must do that. But look beyond it to see who is destroying the forests, who is destroying the sea. The Amazon forest is still burning. It was set afire, I don't know how many years ago. And that really is the lungs of the world. They're destroying the lungs of the world. And why is it being destroyed? Because someone wants to make money. Are you willing to question, therefore, the means by which such financial ventures exist or the investments they are making? Will you be able to do it? Can you do it alone? Certainly not. It has to be done as a mass and huge program. Are you willing to get together? Now, even the last and final threat that has happened to us in the last 10 years, very visibly, that big money has financed elections, whether it's the USA now or whether it is India. And we've got out information about electoral bonds. So it's not something which is in the air of hypothetics. It is absolutely in front of you. So when big money finances your government and runs democracies, will you ever get democracy to work for you and me? And for this, what shall we do? Or what can we do? What kind of education must we get? What kind of demands we must make is an agenda that's very vital to all of us.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you've put the focus on what has already been done and how that needs to be fostered given the issues which have come up in the implementation of that, asking the right kind of questions, and therefore being able to navigate those challenges which have been thrown in the implementation of such acts, even as you come in with a new agenda in terms of how do you improve society. I think they are very valuable because you have covered a lot of ground and these questions are highly relevant questions. And those who want to take such acts and intents a very long way will certainly need to ask these questions and see how they can be responded to for better execution, irrespective of which group or philosophy they belong to. I think that needs to get understood by those who want to come into this way of working and way of life and mission of life. Thank you, ma'am.
We must learn to talk truth to power. There's a very
Yes.
beautiful saying by a South African poet called Jeremy Cronin. He said, what is democracy? It's speaking truth to power, making truth powerful and power truthful. If we don't do that, there is really no democracy.
Thanks for adding on to that, ma'am. I think this is something which we need to imbibe in the character and the courage that we build up since our childhood and as we live. The next question is related to education. And there are so many institutions, and we are in one way the largest educational system in the world, almost there in terms of numbers with respect to China. So how do we use higher education to provide exposure to young students and motivate some of them to think about this as a career or their involvement as they go along?
The first difference I'd like to make is between schooling, that is formal education, formal instruction, I would say, and education. Education is knowledge. Today, we don't get knowledge from our schooling systems. We get information and we get put into boxes, which are said, this is an IAS box, this is an IIT box, this is a... So the first thing we have to get rid of are those coaching centers. The coaching centers which have taken over the job of education are not educational institutions. They are just bazaars and markets preparing you to enter a system in which you can earn a lot of money. It doesn't care a little bit even about how you think, what is your ethical position, what is your philosophy. So are we talking about those institutions and therefore the results in the IIT and the IAS exam of people who pass through those systems, who can perform, and you evaluate them on that performance, but what is inside them as a value substantively, we do not know. In the older system, though there were fewer schools and colleges, we were put through a system in which we had to be substantively correct. There was no way. I mean, I remember as a student in Delhi University studying English literature, and in Indraprasth College, I didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard or Princeton or Yale or any of these institutions that are now called the great institutions of learning. I went to Delhi University. I paid 16 rupees college fees, 12 rupees for my bus fare, and the learning I've got is equivalent to any great university in the world, because I was made to learn. I was taught how to learn. I was taught how to understand, how to question, and how to read, how to correlate. That skill is gone from us. And somewhere, no matter what you did, there was an understanding of the liberal arts. Today, there is no liberal arts. If you don't understand liberal arts, you cannot understand politics, democracy, or life. You can be anything under the sun, technologically very competent. If you're in the liberal arts, if you don't understand the basics of technology today, you can be swindled. So where is the point where these twain meet in our country? You can't. The two streams, as you call them, are so separate that you grow up in one without knowing the other, and you are not a complete citizen. So I would say India may be exceeding everybody in numbers, but in quality, I think education is dramatically fallen. If you see the generation before mine, my father went to college, my mother was a student of mathematics and physics. My great-grandmother was a school leaver. So I find, and I've said about them in the book, that my mother, she could see the number plate of a car and tell you the square root. Now, I don't have that skill in me, but she was mathematically expert. She had great knowledge of physics. What she could do, I don't think a physics student in the next generation could do. My father studied law and he did economics, but his knowledge of Shakespeare was much greater and more complete than mine, and I was a student of literature. So I think generationally, we have reduced knowledge to skills and education to rote. You can't do that. Principal part of learning is to learn to train your mind to seek knowledge. Now, the main mind is not being trained. I feel it's a loss for this wonderful country, because I think we've had great minds in this country. We've had great inquiries from this country. Many mathematicians have come from this country. Mathematics doesn't come from learning anything by rote. Genuinely, the kind of Ramanujams or C.V. Ramans or etc. we've produced in this country all came from questioning. And we in our educational system today do not allow any questioning. If you don't allow any questioning, you produce good workmen, but you're not going to produce great people anymore.
Excellent, ma'am. I think you've raised a very fundamental point that the bulk of the educational system we have today, bulk by large, doesn't teach you the learning to learn kind of approach that you need throughout life, which you actually should gain when you have your education. And it is then driven by economic factors, the kind of jobs, the kind of salaries, and then the entire society is going after that. And coaching centers and higher education institutions are also following suit. And in many ways, policy is also following suit, asking questions, but then the implementation may not lead to what you're actually asking for when you come to the word education. I think that's a very vital, critical question that higher educational institutions should ask themselves, and they need to figure out ways. I remember one of the directors of the IIT saying that in the earlier years, if you asked one question, you got as many answers as the students in the class in IIT. But today you'll get one answer, and that he attributes to the coaching centers, which I think kind of also reinforces what you have been. Thank you very much, ma'am. That single point
Okay,
has
one
captured.
last thing I'd say about
Sure.
education, and that is, if you do not get rid of these educational loans and privatized education, which is constricting people just to be on the road and deliver to pay off those loans, young people will not go into any kind of creative offbeat activities. The loan hangs on their head like a huge rock. Unless they pay back the loan, they're not free human beings. So I think we've built this vicious cycle. Somehow we have to get free of it.
Thank you, ma'am. I think a very critical financial angle, which kind of takes away all the independence.
Yes.
And puts that thing on the head. Thank you, ma'am. I hand it back to Professor Rao.
Thank you, ma'am. It's going on great. I think let me be selfish and ask a few questions before opening the mic for others to actually ask. There are a couple of questions from the audience as well, but let me ask a couple of questions here. If you can hear me. So the questions are around the fact that you have come up with some tangible results out of your activism in terms of rights-based laws. All of them seem to be towards democratic rights, towards economic empowerment. But then in the beginning of narration in your stories, as you took to the rural India, there were many obstacles like caste, subcaste, and class, and of course, gender-related issues. Now, you seem to be Teflon coated. People perceive you more as, I mean, they don't perceive you as someone who fought for the caste. They don't perceive you as someone who is a leftist. They don't perceive you as someone who is a modern day lingo, if we have to use the libtards and all that kind of language. They don't put any words or labels on you. You manage to actually win through all these things. Is it by accident, or is it by a conscious adoption of a strategy that resulted in this perception about you?
I'm very grateful to you to tell me this is how I'm perceived. I had no idea. I've been called all kinds of names in my time, so I really didn't know that this was the current perception of me, of how I work. But basically, the MKSS and I, despite all the labels, have been human beings at the bottom line. There's a basic humanity. Of course, I know that I will react very sharply, as I've said in the book also, if there is caste atrocity. I cannot bear it. I mean, in my own life, my grandmother's life, untouchability went out of the window in my family. We have intermarried, caste, everything has gone out of the window. But humanitarian kindness and compassion cannot be forsaken for anything. That is something which is the bottom line. And I think as you condemn people for not following either the laws of humanity and compassion or the laws of the land, you have to try and educate them to turn and change. Also, you can't just condemn them, because by condemning them, you create these people who get into positions of revenge. And revenge is no answer. There's a difference between justice and revenge. The MKSS has ever been conscious of it, and I have been ever conscious of it. With class, the trouble with class is that class deludes itself very often that it's not class. And one line of wrong thinking that happened politically in this country, that they didn't talk about caste. They only talked about class. And there is another group that only talked about caste and forgot about class. There is a third group that only talked about gender and forgot the other two. We have looked at all the three variables. We have not looked at one, because life contains and oppresses you through all the three variables. And in that sense, you work towards a greater justice. You don't just draw those lines around you and get constrained by the lines you yourself have drawn, what they call nowadays in modern language, painted yourself into a corner, and then you can't get out of it. So in a sense, one has to be humane, one has to be kind, one has to be compassionate. There's so many examples in rural India that you can sing your Kabir, you can sing your Mira Bhai, you can in Rajasthan sing your Bulle Shah, you can sing your Latif, you can quote Moinuddin Chishti, you can quote Ramana, you can quote anybody you like. I mean, there are so many of these seers. You don't have to be also in not wanting religion to determine the basis of discrimination in life. You need not be condemnatory of religion. Religion may play a role in someone's life, may have a role in someone's life, which is of benefit to them. So you have to understand to differentiate between being religious and being communal. Always. That's why India is a secular country. We believe the state is no religion, but we also have to understand that being religious is when you say, I believe in a God, my God, or whatever you like to say. And when you're communal, you say, my God or other God I believe in is the only God and superior to other gods. The moment you say that in India, you're finished. And I would like to quote from what happened in Biawar. We have set up an RTI museum. The government of Rajasthan gave us land which we paid for and bought in the place where the original Right to Information campaign began in Biawar. It was given to us by a municipality in which BJP was the majority. The BJP does not like us normally because we speak about secularism, we speak about communal harmony, we speak against division between caste and religion. They don't like us. But yet the BJP municipality in Biawar said, Biawar has given the Right to Information law to the country, and therefore we will give them the land for the RTI Transparency Museum. RTI Transparency Museum, we celebrated it in Biawar, and MKSS is left, broad left, you all know. MKSS believes in equality as a fundamental principle, the constitution as a basic tenet. Yet, when we had the initial inauguration, we called all the 4 religious leaders, big religious leaders in Biawar, to come and bless the constitution, to say that the constitution gives us the right to freedom of worship. So we respect the constitution. So you have to interpret the law in the way it is just, tenable, and humane. You cannot stick to anything saying this is bad. The moment I say you are terribly bad and I am good, then I fall into the same mistake that you are doing with me. I have to say you have a right to survive, I have a right to survive. Let's see how we will survive together with equal rights and with a basic compassion and humanity. That is what my constitution gives me. I'm a great believer in the Indian constitution. I'm a great bhakt of B.R. Ambedkar. But I believe in that constitution because it's the only just way in which a multi-religious, multi-racial, multi-linguistic, multi-everything country that India is can survive as one political unity. So if I want India as one political unity to continue with the dream that we were born with in 1947, I have to believe that we will be compassionate, kind, and tolerant. If you remove these words from our constitution, remove those words from my vocabulary, India is finished.
Amazing, ma'am. Amazing. Thank you very much. Compassion, kindness, and being humane are at the root of what you believe and what you do. I think that's summed up very well. I have one question from what you wrote. In the initial years, you said that you had no handbook or a guide that helped you navigate this multicultural India. From where you were to where you adopted a new home, there were lots of cultural barriers in terms of gender, practices, customs, so on and so forth. Over the last 50 years, the way India has changed. Today, if someone were to take to grassroots in rural India, would we have so many cultural barriers, so many obstacles that you kind of faced during that time? Or is it completely changed?
I think there are more.
There are more.
Yes. I'm sorry to say, no one asked me my religion when I came to Rajasthan, except they thought maybe I'd come to do a religious conversion. Maybe some people thought I'd come here to exploit as a miner, mining family to exploit them. Or somebody thought I was going to use the language I had of power and authority to exploit them. There was far greater acceptance of human beings than there is today. The superficial understanding, yes, superficial acceptance, but that kind of acceptance that has made me a part of the many rural families in Rajasthan, I don't think will happen today with the same facility and felicity that it happened before. It's not possible. So the people accepted me. And I remember the first time I came to live in this village, and the women said, oh, you know, these women are staying with the men and therefore they are not of good character. The woman who stood up for us was an elderly woman, belt double with age, whom you would think she had never seen outsiders. But she stood up for us and went and told the village, you should be ashamed of yourselves that these young women have come and they're willing to give their lives for making your life and my life better. They've given up something and come here. What right have you to condemn them like this? They are our children. They are our younger sisters and brothers. And that's how you should treat them. Today, no one will stand up for me if I go to a village to say that. I mean, if I come like I was there, they'll all close their doors and watch their televisions. So let's also understand that there is a cultural change in rural India, which has made them less of a community, less interested in the larger well-being of people, and therefore not understanding the connections that exist between all of us in the larger community. And instead of all this, there is just religion. In the past, there was not just only religion. There were other factors. Of course, there was also religion. They asked you your caste. Of course, they asked me my caste. But there was also the question of kindness and understanding that we all live according to the tenet of the connectedness of human beings, which I think to a very large extent has disappeared, but still there is more than in urban India. Much more than in urban India today. There is an interest in human beings who come. There's an interest in what you do. There's an interest. That human level, there is still a reaching out beyond yourself. It's diminishing, but it's there. But in urban India, nobody could care less. There is a house I live in Delhi. When I go there, there's a flat down below. They don't know who we are. We don't know who they are. We don't know who the other flats are. Who lives where, what they do. Nobody knows anything. You may think it's privacy, but it's also loneliness. Whereas you come to a village, everybody's interested, everybody knows. It's not to paint a very rosy picture of rural India. There are also the evils have come of a nuclear family. Mothers, grandmothers, old people are not looked after anymore. There's a great degradation in the quality of life of older people. All this is also happening. Land is getting fragmented because of divisions. There are huge fights over land rights between castes. When Dalits are being killed recently in a place called Dangabas, very near Ajmer, where I partly live, things are happening. So I'm not building a totally rosy picture. But in comparative terms, there are some things that are very good and some things that are not so good.
Okay. Yeah. So I have one question before I open the mic. There are a couple of comments as well. My question is, ma'am, at some point you talked about goals set by the government, which is not steeped in the current reality. So one example was the toilet building exercise and the open defecation that one wanted to root out. Can you explain that, ma'am? I didn't understand much. What was the dissonance that you saw there in terms of the goal with building toilets?
You've got to live in rural India to understand that, I guess. But one thing, nobody is for open defecation. Everybody thinks there should be toilets. There's no question about that. But there are other things that go with it. First of all, first thing, do you have land next to your house to dig that septic tank so that you can build a toilet? You can't defecate and let that in a small room and let it run it into the nala outside. Can't. It has to go underground. Do you have land? And the people who have land have now built their toilets. People who don't have land, are you giving them land to build toilets? Are you giving them bigger houses? There is so much land in the village. Are you allocating land to the landless? Are you doing all the rest? Then the toilet will also come. I have a very good friend whom I've quoted called Northi, a Dalit leader who also became sarpanch of her village. But she was an honest sarpanch, so she didn't make any money. One day she came to me and she said, I'm breaking down my kitchen. I said, breaking down your kitchen? What's wrong with you? She said, I'm making a toilet. Because if I don't make a toilet, and I don't have any space. So the choice is between the kitchen and the toilet. I said, you damn the toilet, keep the kitchen. She said, I can't. Because if I don't make the toilet, they will cut off all benefits. So I have to make the toilet. This is very queer planning, if you ask. Very bad planning. Then the same question of land For people who build toilets, you need water. So you build what are called tankas in Rajasthan, in which you store water. And the tanka needs land again. Unless you have land and you build the tankas, you don't have water. So where is the water to come from? And many of the women said to me, we are not going to fetch, as it is, we fetch 6 pitchers of water for drinking and for cooking. You expect us to bring another 20 pitchers of water for the toilet? Not possible. We can't do it. So let's be practical. First give water, land, space, and you give the toilet, it will be possible. Otherwise, it won't be possible. That's why poor people do not have toilets. Not because they don't want toilets, but that they can't have toilets.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. I think there's a lot of knowledge that we had to gain to understand what you said. Thank you so much. I'm actually coming into a different world. It's about, again, based on what you have written, and then I'll hand over it to Rajendra Kumar. I'm reading out, ma'am, from page number 20. The words women use, their style and the concepts that emerge from them can often topple the male citadel, not merely by use of language, but by thought itself. The relationship of a woman to language, we were actually explaining that. How is that a centrality to your style of activism, and what kind of role that language played? If you can explain that, we'll move to the question that audience would like to have.
Well, I'll tell the young people who are listening, and also the not so young people who are listening, that you must read a book by a very famous writer called George Steiner, called Language and Silence. I read it when I was just past my post-graduation, and maybe somewhere deep in my conscience, I also felt that the language girls use, which is emotive language, or language with a lot of compassion, passion, insight, is always set down before the boys who always talk about things in practical terms. So a cricket match is far more important happening than collecting flowers from the garden, or talking about the beauty of a picture is less important than talking about an atomic explosion. I mean, and the language you use therefore has to be hard, it has to be full of facts, it has to be full of figures. You cannot, knowing that something is wrong and articulating about it has to be supported not by the human condition, but by hard facts. If you don't use hard facts, it's wrong. You can see a person dying in front of you, but you'll have to support it by hard facts. You have to prove that that person is dying because of. So I think instinctively felt that there was a discredit of the knowledge born of experience, of understanding vulnerability, of understanding the human condition, and only what was said in books or through the Aristotelian syllogism of man is, the famous Aristotelian syllogism, which I read when I was in college as an undergraduate student. All men are mortal. I am a man, therefore I am mortal. It's the famous Aristotelian syllogism, which we all learned. That you derive truth or fact from only this kind of derivative deductive logic. But there are many other systems of logic. I found that I was working with people in the village by different systems of logic, and they were fantastic. They told you the truth. And then I read an excellent book, which if you take down, you can even find in the internet, called About Communication by a man called Andreas, Andreas Fugglesang, Fuglesang. It's a Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation book, in which the first chapter of his says the arrogance of Aristotle. So I was so piqued when I read it. It was in the 80s. I read this book and I thought, here's one man who understands my predicament, because he said there is ways of understanding and ways of becoming knowledgeable without following the syllogism. So that's why I've always been fascinated by language, because when I went and asked a woman, how much money did you get in the year X as labor? She would tell me a story. And initially I had the male mind. I used to say, hurry up, tell me how much you were paid. She would say, no, acha, it was that year when my sister-in-law was this, and I went to that village, and I remember going to that village. Oh yes, and we had this work, and this work was from here to here. And then after 5 minutes of meandering around, she'd tell me what was the wage paid. But in the course of that, I also understood social history of how people worked and how they got into situations where they demanded work. So I myself was impatient. So I understood that there is a use of language which is colorful, different, multi-layered, and so on.
Amazing, amazing. So one should have the patience to listen to the story.
They can also be very, very sharp and to the point. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But
yeah.
we also tell stories. Let's not be under the illusion that we do. I don't know how many stories I've said this evening.
Yeah.
To all of you.
Yes, yes. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. So I'll not test the patience of those members who have been raising their hands. I'll request Mr. Rajendra Kumar to ask his question. Okay, Mr. Sanjay.
Thank you. Thank you. Greetings, Aruna. Sanjay Gadale here. Please convey my regards to Bunker as well. Amazing session as always. Your stories take us back into history as well as real learnings that we have had. I was just wondering where does our RTI initiative stand, ma'am, today after this after the combined efforts of both the last two governments and where we stand today. What is the future that you see for RTI and the citizens of this country?
I think there must be mass mobilization against the DPTPA. We are having a meeting in Delhi on the 20th. We are forming a campaign. Unless
Wonderful.
we stop the DPTPA from taking over and restraining us from asking for information under the third-party fiduciary clause, they are finished. And I've been saying it to all the RTI campaigners. And unfortunately, all RTI campaigners, I believe we are between 60 to 80, 40 to 60 lakh users every year in this country. But like every other Indian, they have the same problem. They lose the woods for the tree. So we have had to force them into understanding how important it is to get this larger act together.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
What is being done in the south? Anything that we could do from Hyderabad or from Bangalore and Chennai? Please let us know.
Yeah, I will let you know. If you can just send me your email ID, then I will. What
Sure,
I will do is post that meeting. I will. My email ID is arunaroy@gmail.com. You just send me
I
email ID.
I have your email ID, ma'am. We are in touch. By the way, I'm in Delhi between 1st and 5th of March. I will see if I can ping you as well.
I'm not in Delhi.
Oh, you are in Tilonia, I think.
At the moment, I'm in Tilonia, but I will be in Rajasthan somewhere. So,
Okay. I'll send you my email ID, ma'am.
Please,
You have it,
I will
although.
send you the information. Sure, Sanjay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Not at all. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. This question from Rajendra Kumar, he is not opening the mic. Can I read out and then we'll save time? His question was around, ma'am, do you think in the last 10 years, better changes have happened in India? He wanted your comment on that compared to what we have seen in the past. In the last 10 years, have better changes taken place in this country?
I can only say not for the poor, not for women, not for public expression, not for the right to freedom of expression generally and the right to free speech, not to the right to free expression of religion, not to free expression of criticism and critique of what is ours. The government is ours. The country is mine. To say to me that because I critique my own country, I have anti-national is for me the most ridiculous thing you can say. So for us all, it hasn't been a pleasant 10 years. But we are not everybody. There may be somebody who says it's brilliant because they've got more money in the bank, that they've got more. But even for the poor people, their essential life now is dominated by what we call the debt economy. They're all in debt, and these are these EMIs. And because of the EMIs and because of taking loans, they've got a better life. But if you really examine what they earn every day and how much they have to spend, they're always worried, because if they don't, they lose the capital, they lose their investment, they lose everything. And what are they? Motorcycles, houses, small things like that. So what we've created is a debt economy, and to falsify all this and proclaim that we are a very progressive economy, debt is now converted into assets in public projection. I have a lot of problems with this. I don't know if you have, but I certainly do.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. The other question the gentleman asked was, you feel coaching centers are not okay, agreed, but what is your opinion on the madrasas and what is your opinion on JNU?
I find this a very odd question.
Yeah.
What is my opinion of RSS-run schools or on madrasas? Both of them are equally the same. I would say that education should be broad-based and should be for everybody, yes. But a madrasa can also give it. And if the RSS forgets to be a propagator of just one religion, it can also give it. The idea is not whether it's a madrasa or whether it's an RSS school or whether it's a fundamentalist Christian institution. The idea is that education must be broad-based, based on the constitutional norms and in a language which will facilitate the child to carry on with higher education. I'm not going to make a comment about any one of these because all three for me are equally bad.
Absolutely.
If
Thank
they
you, ma'am.
follow that dictum.
Yes. Fundamentally, what you said is that education should be broad-based and it should entail how we can learn, how we can understand, how we can interpret, how we can have built-in compassion, kindness, so on and so forth. I think that's what you are largely commenting.
I'm saying more. I'm saying that you can keep Urdu, you can keep Sanskrit, you can keep the Bible or the Quran, or you can keep the Bhagavad Gita. That is not the important thing or not the important thing. Important thing is, are you telling the child that this is, you are superior because you believe in the Bhagavad Gita, or superior because you believe in the Quran, or superior because you believe in the Bible? All three essentially say the same thing. How are they any different? So are you saying this is one way? There are many other ways. Are you saying this is the only way?
Thank you so much for your patience in responding to all our questions of all kinds. I'll request Professor Prasad to make any comment. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up and thank ma'am.
I think we have covered good ground, and this is a new DNA of, we have not been having such conversations in these 183. And we also need to know the strain of conversation in order to incorporate it into our livelihoods and our lives. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have understood how cardinal it is that the personal is political today after this conversation and after reading your book than ever before. And I think everyone will be set to start thinking about the things that are individually affecting us cannot be distanced from what can be a collective action. I think that consciousness will help all of us going forward. At least there'll be acceptance to some of the movements that are happening, and there'll be openness to question, and you will be raising your voice against an oppression or unjust activities that are happening around us. I think that's the purpose of life, which is intertwined with kindness and compassion all the while. I think these learnings should stay with us, and even the modern day activists or the people that who would like to speak for the marginalized, people who would like to stand by the subalterns, all of them will get empowered and inspired by the actions and the results that you have achieved over a period of 50 years, ma'am. We would like to thank you for your patience and for joining us from a remote place in spite of being extremely busy. And where you are, ma'am, maybe probably less than 100 kilometers from your place where you are right now in Tolonia, we have a university, ICFAI University Jaipur. It's on the Ajmer Road. And wherever you go, probably we have a university. We try to inculcate good values and learn from the leaders like you. And we hope to also meet you in person at one of these universities whenever it's convenient to you. I want to again thank you so much for this time.
Anything in Rajasthan is easier than anything outside Rajasthan.
Okay, fair enough. Rajasthan, we are there in Jaipur. Yes, we'll do the first connect there. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
so,
you.
ladies and gentlemen, that was a wonderful conversation. Next week on Friday, we are talking to Mallika Sarabhaiji. She is going to talk about another leadership journey that she has undertaken on next Friday. Look forward to it. We'll catch up with you with lots of information and updates and communication. Till then, go through some of the achievements that Aruna Roy-ji has made. Read about her papers, her presentations, her talks. I think it's quite enlightening and eye-opening for all of us. I think we need to use those learnings in our own domains and come back for the next dose of learnings next week. See you next week. Have a great weekend and keep learning. Thank you all.